must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice, in the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny.
Well, I'm missing some of my audience and I'm missing some of my guests, but we're going to do a show. Yes. Thank you for all coming. I'm sitting with the mayor of Los Angeles, Tom Bradley. Yes. I've been watching the news all day. There's been a lot of activity in the city. Some of the activity, as I watch, I say, does it have anything to do with Rodney King?
Yes.
What do you
You've got to ask that question of yourself. You know, these have been two of the most difficult days of my life. Sad days. Days of horror and disbelief. When the jury came in the Rodney King beating case and acquitted all 4 officers, I said, I'm shocked, I'm stunned. I cannot believe it. Where were these jurors? In outer space? On the moon? They could not see that videotape and come to that conclusion that these officers had done no wrong. Yet that was their verdict. And we were fearful. That was the worst case scenario, but I must tell you, Arsenio, I could not believe that any jury could come in with that decision. And when the verdict was announced, there was a sense of outrage, of anger, of frustration that was felt across this city, across the nation, and around the world. Because people had seen that videotape, and they knew you could not explain that jury's verdict. There was an almost immediate reaction, outcry, protests, anger by the average person in this city, and that was appropriate. I invited them to do that because I thought it was necessary for them to vent their feelings, to let people know how they felt, their anger. But I cautioned them that you don't go beyond the verbal expression. You don't go toward verbal and then into physical violence. But sad enough, that's what happened. Some of the young men of this community chose to take the law into their own hands, sought to kill, and they did, 9 people on the first day. They sought to burn and to loot, to steal. It was a saddening event for me. And in part because I was so proud of the image of this city, one where we live in peace and tranquility in the most diverse city in the world. People living, working, playing together side by side in peace and harmony. Not every day, not under all circumstances, but generally that was the pattern. That was a picture of Los Angeles.
As mayor, what do you do to stop this violence?
There is an appeal must be made, and I'm grateful that the leadership of this community, black, white, brown, all colors, appealing for a rational approach to the matter. finding ways of solving it without turning to lawlessness. You must go beyond that because you've got to have a law enforcement agency or a National Guard that will come in to maintain peace and security. People in this city must feel that they can leave their homes, go to their shops and stores and businesses in peace and security. And you can't do that if people are running wild on these streets. And you hear people express that fear. I can't go out today or tonight for fear that I will be shot or I will be assaulted. So you have to bring in the National Guard along with the sheriff and the police department. And we've done that. Tonight, the National Guard is on the streets of Los Angeles. And by their presence, they're saying, we will not tolerate lawlessness. You may be free to travel these streets in peace, in compliance with the law. But don't break the law, or we'll put you in jail.
What do you tell young teenagers, black and white, around the country, around the world, about our system that appears right now not to be working, our judicial system?
Our system of justice in this country has not always, in fact, not ever been just, fair, and balanced. There have been many improvements that have been made. There was a time when a black man in this country could not stand up for his rights in court. That's no longer true. Now, going to court, you may not get all of your rights, but we must work that system, change it. And that's what we're going through now. And I appeal to all young people. Live, obey, trust this system. Where you find faults with it, help to correct it. Speak out against those wrongs. There are others who join you in that effort. That's the way we change the system.
I saw Daryl Gates on the news, and he said he had talked to the governor, and he had talked to you. Did you talk to Daryl Gates?
Yes, yes.
What was that conversation about?
That was dealing with the question of what we must do, how the National Guard would be brought in to deal with the problem. And also an assessment from him as to what the situation was and what steps we needed to take, what laws, what orders we needed to give. And so it was the first time in a year that I had actually spoken with Daryl Gates. But we had something in common that we were dealing with, our respect, our love for this city, and our desire to bring about a sense of security in the city for all peoples.
Yeah, when I mentioned your name, they welcomed you with a warm round of applause, but you have your critics in this city. What do you say to those people who are saying it's Tom Bradley's fault?
I ask them to listen to what I have said. If they do that and then find fault with what I've said, I will not be able to understand it, but at least I want them to hear all that I have said. And I've appealed for this community to express itself. I've appealed to the Warren Christopher Commission to explore all of the problems that they found in the police department and to recommend some changes for reform. I want this to be the best police department in the country. The Christopher Commission found volumes of wrongs, all fact, all evidence. And when that was presented to the city council and to the people, it was concluded that we had to make some changes. So there's a ballot measure on our June 2nd ballot, Charter Amendment F, to reform and to make accountable the chief of police and all of the members of the department. All of this is based upon fact. I didn't manufacture any of this. I didn't try in a political fashion to distort it. Just the facts is all I asked for. And if somebody will see that record, they cannot conclude that it's my fault. I didn't beat Rodney King. You see?
They asked a gentleman... They asked the gentleman on the news why he was looting. And he responded, because it's free. Have you talked to George Bush? The economy has to play a major role in what's going on right now.
I talked to President Bush this morning, first of all, about the need to have the Justice Department reopen their case of the civil rights violations against Rodney King.
Sounds like a full audience.
Yes, the credit to the president, he said yes, he would. And in fact, within an hour, made a public statement to a nationwide audience that that's exactly what they were going to do. He felt outraged by the verdict of the jury. He could not believe it. And he said the Justice Department is going to reopen this case and determine where we go from here. I asked him to help us with small business loans for those people who lost their businesses. There were over 300 buildings destroyed by fire. Yeah. And the damages, the loss is going to amount to at least $200 million just for the buildings alone, to say nothing of all of the products and the merchandise inside. So we got a long way to go on that issue. But the president not only promised to send somebody out here, that person from SBA will be in this city on Saturday, and we will begin to work on how the people who lost so much can begin to feel a sense of restoration. Yeah. Thirdly, we've talked about how do we create more jobs? How do we get jobs for these young men who have no hope? They've asked me to send a representative back to Washington next week to discuss a program to secure and provide jobs in this community. So we've made some progress there. But I want to get back to this looting in the stores, because I worked so hard to bring and to keep businesses in South Central Los Angeles. You know, after the uprising in 1965, many of them left, some never to return. And none of them wanted to come back. We had a shopping center at 103rd and Compton, but in order for that to be viable, we had to get an anchor store, a supermarket. I talked to every supermarket owner in this country, and not one of them was willing to come back with a store. I finally went to one who had been in the black community the longest, Joe Goldstein. I said, Joe, why won't you come back in here and help us out? He said, well, it's a losing proposition. I said, Joe, if you don't make a dime off of this one, you've made enough off of these other stores in South Central that you ought to put this store in there. He agreed to do so, and it turned out to be one of the biggest money makers in his chain. Today, I flew over it, and we learned that it had been damaged by fire. You can repeat that over and over again, and it doesn't matter the color of the owner. Bill Stennis has a Golden Bird chicken store at Martin Luther King in Vermont. Wiped out, destroyed. Here's a man who all of his adult life in this city has provided jobs, economic support in this community. His store is gone for nothing that he did, but because somebody had no respect for that man's property, no respect for the law, no respect for anybody. And we've got to change that. We saw parents, mothers, bringing their little children into these stores that had been ripped open and having the kids help them put the stolen goods into their baskets and into their cars. What kind of a lesson is that to teach to a youngster? That's what made me so sad today.
It's a terrible lesson. Look, I'm going to take a quick commercial. Gosh, I got the community here. I have Reverend Murray here. Sean Penn is in the house. Edward James Olmos is here. Lou Reed is back there. Sinbad is in the house. Meshach Taylor is here. We're going to deal with this issue and have an interesting hour. Yeah, you're here too, baby. We'll be right back. During the commercial, this woman had some wonderful things to say, and I wish you would tell America. Would you come down, please? Come here. She's very shy. Would you come down, though? Come here. She didn't want to talk on the air. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. Come here. I guess you wanted to ask Mayor Bradley the questions. Talking to my microphone here. Come back, come back.
Right, I like the TV not to show me when I'm making the statement.
Okay, well, look at me then.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, the question that I want to address to the mayor is, what we talk about the system. What can the system do for us, the people of the city and county of Los Angeles? That the verdict came down is such a shock to conscience verdict. What can the system do for us? Number one, for us such a shock to conscience verdict. Number two, why is a case that's so important, so much interest, so much concern to the people who live in the city and county of Los Angeles, we are allowed to go to another community who didn't care about the case, who didn't care about us. And we have an all-white jury. We have 2 ex-cops sitting on the jury. We have a white jury that, what was I saying? That
Sympathizing?
No. I mean, we went to a community who just didn't give. Not only that they don't care, and the Lawrence Powers attorney Michael Stone is saying that this is not a racial question. It's not a racial case. I want to know. What I want to know is, if it's not a racial case, we took out the all-white jury. It's only all-white jury can decide a fair and just verdict. Black people cannot decide on it. They can't decide for themselves.
Let's let Mayor Bradley address that.
Not one single black person was on the jury. Black people are not capable of delivering such a verdict. Only all-white jury is able to give you a fair and just verdict. What does it mean?
I'm glad you raised those questions, because by repeating those kinds of questions, the country needs to know that we don't accept that jury verdict. They can't tell us that we didn't see what we know we saw on that videotape. Only when enough voices are raised in protest against that kind of injustice will we change the system. So I applaud you for your question, and I hope that many more are going to repeat it. Many more will speak out on that issue.
Yes. I was introduced to a gentleman in my dressing room right before the show. Sean Penn brought him by. Introduce yourself, sir.
My name is Craig B. Hewlett.
What do you think of the situation? How do you sum it up?
Well, to put it bluntly, since 1964, we've had our Civil Rights Act, and then for the last 20 years, we've systematically lost all of our civil liberties. And this isn't just black people, it's everybody across the board. And it isn't being done in a sense that the media is going to pick up on it. It isn't necessarily being done in statute law. Often it's done with executive orders from the president. And where it stands right here, right now, for the last 10 years, we've lost our exclusionary rule, writ of habeas corpus. Right now, they're talking about, already passed in law, opening 10 abandoned military bases to house first-time drug offenders, illegal aliens, and the homeless. Now, there's no way on earth, to my way of thinking, and I'm a white man here, there's no way on earth, to my way of thinking, that this community of blacks and Hispanics can watch this go down, because primarily the drug and crime bills are being assaulted on that community. Where 80% of white America does the drugs, 70% of the arrests are blacks and Hispanics. this has been going on for 20 years. The last 10 years it's been condensed because, and I have to put it in this terminology, and I know it's going to offend some people, George Bush was in charge of the drug war in 1982. The man is still in charge of the drug war, and this is the worst part of it. The reason they can do this, they can trash our Constitution and do the things.
Fires had not started, and the things had not started. These men were not going to walk. They're not going to walk away from this. They're not going to walk now, whether Bush does it or not. They're not walking away from this. So if we didn't have to burn the buildings down, we were ready to make a move. We had leaders right here. They're ready to make a move. It wasn't like the committee was sitting there. They were going to do something positive. I see people putting things in their pockets because they want them. Not because of Rodney King. It's like, yo, I can go get me a stereo now. I'm going to take it. And that's what we have to make the differentiation. What's happening here, man?
Yeah. Mr. Olmos, take my mic.
Arsenio, basics, like they say, that people are taking advantage of this situation to the max. I just hope that right now, that especially the people in areas where this is starting to explode into, San Francisco, it's into Philadelphia, it's into different areas now that are starting to use this as a way of expressing themselves and feelings that go, as my friend here said, way back for many, many years. This behavior, which is not condoned by anyone here, really isn't. Nobody wants to see violence because violence does not beget anything but more violence. An eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. That's a given. That's a given. That's a given. The most essential part about this is that this is a means of getting the attention the worst way, but we used it with the Boston Tea Party. Go back 200 years and you'll find it being done then. You find it every time the populace gets so frustrated, it has no alternative. And people are going to say, well, Eddie, this was the justice of the land. It was the justice of the land. It was done that way. This time, the only difference this time is that everyone got to see it. And granted, everyone that was on the jury has, I heard one lady speak today and she was very clear about it. No one really can take into consideration that there were 3 people in the car. 2 of them were not beaten up, 1 was. Why was the 1 beaten up? Okay, I can understand that. I can understand them saying, you don't know the 100-mile-an-hour chase for 15 minutes, Eddie. You don't know what these guys have been through, like the man from Switzerland said. You don't know what kind of pain these police officers have had throughout the years of working in the police force, dealing with this kind of stuff every day. Okay, I understand that, okay? But 50 some odd hits when they have 12 guys or 15 guys around somebody, no way can that not be excessive violence. Now, the fact that how much excessive violence is written into the rules of the police department and how much can you use is what we're talking about. Now, the rules say, the way they described them to the people in the jury was that they didn't. They used as much as they had to because this guy kept on moving. Period. He just kept on moving. He should have just stood still. Now, when you're beaten up like that, your body kind of does its own little thing. That's another one. Okay, forget that. The fact that they altered their reports was not enough either, obviously. So now what happens is that brings an anger amongst the entire populace, African American, Latin American, and European American, Native American, Asian American. What has happened now is that for many years, and we've been talking about this for a long, long time, many of the leaders here, we've been talking about children killing children for no reason. Well, I got to ask everybody right now, keep your eye on this situation, because we have children out there right now that are bearing arms. They're my sons and my daughters. They're my children. And I ask you, please, to make sure that the violence that is taken back onto them, because they have those guns, because they have those weapons. For years we've been calling, please don't allow these children to have these guns. Don't make our children kill each other to bring awareness to a problem that's an epidemic, a medical epidemic. Please don't do this. You've done it. Okay, you've allowed it. We've allowed it, all of us. Okay. Now, the militia's coming in. The National Guard's coming in. 4,000 strong to start with. These are our children, just like Kent State. They were my brothers and my sisters at Kent State. And I just say this very calmly, very cool. Just keep your eye on it and let's see how far we take it. Thank you.
Edward James Olmos. I'm a graduate of Kent State. When I hear the words, I get scared. I get scared. Gosh, we'll pause, do a little music with Lou Reed, and come back and rap. My next guest can truly be called a rock and roll veteran. For 25 years, his music has combined what he calls heart, soul, and guts. Performing his classic, Walk on the Wild Side, please give it up for Lou Reed.
I came from Miami, FLA, hitchhiked away across the USA. Plucked her eyebrows along the way, then he shaved his legs. Honey, he was a she. They said, hey babe, you take a walk on the wild side. You take a walk on the wild side. Candy came from out on the island. In the back room, she was everybody's darling. But she never once lost her head, even when she's giving good head. Said, you gotta walk on the wild side. You gotta walk on the wild side. Hey, Jimmy. You got to walk on the wild side. Little Joey never once gave it away. Everybody, well, they had to pay. Hustle here and a hustle there. New York City is the place where, hey, babe, you gotta walk on the wild side. Hey, babe, you gotta walk on the wild side. Jackie, she is just speeding away. Thought she's Jimmy Dean or Dave. Then you know that she had to crash. Valium would have helped that crash, babe. Take a walk on the wild side. Hey, yeah, you gotta walk on the wild side. Go, Jimmy, go. On the guitar, Michael Blair on the drums, and Rob Wasserman on the bass, and it's an honor to be with Jimmy Scott.
Boy, you'll be right back. That was great.
That road.
I am actually sitting here between my pastor, Reverend Cecil Murray, and and the star of your favorite CBS sitcom, Designing Women, Meshach Taylor. Meshach, You have a kid, so I know you're really into this issue. Talk about it.
I mean, I've gotten more than one kid, but recently, 22 months ago, I had my first son, and my wife had my first son. And yesterday I was in Crenshaw. I was at 43rd in Crenshaw when the decision and the verdict came in. And it saddened me because immediately I started to fear, not only for myself, but for my baby boy. I started to fear for his future because what does that tell him to see a man beaten the way Rodney, who, by the way, is a neighbor of mine. I live in Altadena, California. To see a man beaten this way, and the people who did it have not committed a crime according to the system that we have to work with. This is something that frightens me beyond belief, and it did bring tears to my eyes. As Sinbad said, it made me weep, you know, to feel that this could happen in our country. Also, I think that what we have here is, it's finally trickled down. The thing that Mr. Reagan was talking about 10 years ago, we've known it in our community for some time, that people were at the point where they were about to explode. But Mr. Bush keeps saying that things are getting better. And that there's not really a recession. But where we are, the kids that I saw out on the street, 60% of them cannot find a job. Now that these places are burned down, the rest of them are out of work. So here we have maybe 85% unemployment in neighborhoods like mine, where I live, Altadena, or South Central Los Angeles. And to next week, the fires will be out. And I think now we have to decide what we're going to do now. Because eventually the fires will be out. Eventually the police will get control and people will be off the streets again. But the problem has not changed. We have got to make our government responsible for the citizens of the United States and for our welfare. Look at all the time, they've been killing babies in this same neighborhood for 10 years. Did America think that the violence was just going to stay there? That it wasn't going to become everyone's problem? This isn't a black problem. It's not a white problem. I looked at TV. Hello. I saw Latin American people. I saw white people throwing rocks. I saw everybody throwing rocks. There is a problem here that it goes beyond race. There's a problem here that speaks to our spirituality. It speaks to our morality, to allow people to live in these depressed situations without hope. Hopelessness. Of course, they're doing the things that they're doing because if an individual has no hope in his life, he doesn't care about himself. And if he doesn't care about himself, you know he doesn't give a damn about anybody else. You know? So if people are surprised around the country to see this kind of venom, this kind of passion being displayed, then they should look to Washington for answers. When they can spend the kind of money that they spend in Iraq to wipe out Saddam Hussein, they should be spending money here in the United States, in our communities.
Yes. I'm going to take a commercial, come back with more Lou Reed. What is it you always tell me? Let's not burn down our neighborhoods. Let's burn down the ballot boxes. We got to change. We'll be right back. Back to perform his new single, What's Good, from his latest album, or CD, Magic and Lost. Please give it up for Lou Reed.
Life's like a mayonnaise soda and life's like space without room. Life's like bacon and ice cream. That's what life's like without you. Life's like forever hurting, but life's forever dealing and hurt. Now life's like death without living. That's what life's like without you. Life's like Sanskrit read to a pony. I sing strangling on your tongue. What good was knowing such devotion? I've been around, I know what makes things run. What good is computerized chocolate? What good's a computerized nose? And what good was beating Rodney King? No good at all. What good's a war without killing? What good is rain that falls up? What good's a disease that can't hurt you? Why no good? I guess no good at all. What good are these thoughts that I'm thinking? It must be better not to be thinking at all. Styrofoam people with emotions of concrete. It's no good, not good at all. What good is law without justice? What good is a law that can't feel? We love the life that others throw away nightly, and it's not fair. Not fair at all. What's good? What's good? What's good? What's good? Not much at all. Hey, baby, tell me what's good? What's good? Hey, what's good? Not much at all, but life's good. Life's good. Life's good. Life's good.
Time. I got about 20 seconds. I want to give it to my pastor.
All right.
And I want to give us a prayer. May I?
You got it.
Abba, Papa, you've made of one all of the nations of the earth. Here in this city that could be a garden city, 146 nations. Papa, tonight we are ashamed, for we must rise like a phoenix from the ashes. Then let us rise together. Let us commit to each other to hold each other's hand, that this nation under God may indeed be under God. That this nation under God may indeed have a new birth of freedom. Thank you for this, your son and servant Arsenio, who dares to find a creative way. Thank you for tomorrow, which can be, which must be better than today. Into thy hands do we commit our spirits. Let the people of God say, amen. Amen. Amen.
I'll see you in 23 hours. Later.